Welcome back to Rudy's 1/6 World for another retrospective showcase video. And with all the excitement about the newly announced 1973 Hugh Jackman Wolverine, I figured this was probably a good chance to revisit some of the older Hot Toys releases. Now, instead of doing an individual video for each version of Wolverine, I decided to just group these together so we could see the progression Hot Toys has made. So for this video, we'll be taking a look at the original Wolverine from X-Men Origins, the version of the character from The Wolverine, and finally the future version of the character from Days of Future Past. I did pass on the Wolverine version from X-Men Last Stand. I just wasn't a fan of the expression they gave him, and I didn't personally think the likeness was there. Now for me, I think it goes without saying that Hugh Jackman was iconic in this role. And I know he wasn't exactly comic accurate, but putting that aside, I think he embodied Logan well, culminating in his final appearance, which was just a masterpiece send-off to the character. Now, I thought Origins Wolverine was enjoyable, it was entertaining, but I never revisited the movie. It wasn't that great of a movie in my opinion. But without further ado, let's jump into the figures. And first, we're looking at the original Wolverine release, MMS 103. And I think first statement, he holds up really well for an older figure. Keep in mind he's 13 years old at this point, having been released in 2009. Now, he didn't come with much, just 2 sets of interchangeable hands, a stand, and his dog tags, which I kept on the figure. And most importantly, he came with his claws, which were really nicely done in metal here. And they look great, and they are sharp, which is going to be a running trend here with these figures. Now, looking at the sculpt, I think it was a decent sculpt for its time, and it has a great paint application and texturing. And from a distance, it does have some resemblance to Hugh Jackman, but it's not what we're now accustomed to. And in particular, I think the eyes and the paint and texturing choice around them are what has allowed the current figures to really stand out more and seem more lifelike and realistic. I think these earlier releases, while great for their time, were really missing that. As far as his clothing, the highlight here is the jacket. I'm not sure what material they used, but it wasn't pleather. So the benefit is the jacket hasn't deteriorated at all over time. And it has some nice color variations and stitching, as well as details along the zippers. The same can't be said for his belt though. Definitely pleather, and I can already see the buckle showing some signs of detachment. So I'm going to try to be a little more gentle with him. Having said that, the buckle is also really nicely done, and beyond that, he comes with his standard blue jeans, which aren't stiff at all, so you can move his legs around easily. Also, he does come with his dog tags, like I mentioned, which have his name etched on them, so also a nice touch, although the chain is a little out of scale for 6-scale figures. The one thing I do want to note with this figure is that the joints for his arms in particular are really stiff. But the ankles are also loose, which means you really do need to use the stand a little bit with him to achieve some poses. You can also technically recreate his cross-armed pose with his bladed hands crossing in front of him, but with how stiff the joints are, I don't want to push it for fear of breaking the figure. Now, second up, we have the version from The Wolverine in his black suit from the funeral scene. It's figure MMS 220, launched in 2013, so almost 10 years old here. Definitely another legacy figure. Now, this version did include more accessories. Overall, I thought The Wolverine as a movie was a much better film than Origins, with great action, and I love the setting in Japan, which is such a great throwback to the history of the character in the comics. So for this figure, he does come with an alternate set of boots, and as you can tell, they're sculpted but nicely detailed, and even the laces look like they're actually real laces. He also comes with a set of brown pants with a belt that you can use to recreate a second look with his tank top. For me, I think it's such a hassle to change him from the suit, and I just prefer the suit look for this version of the character. He also comes with a beautiful Japanese sword with its sheath. The blade for the sword is metal, and as you can tell from the close-up, it has nice etching with Japanese characters that really makes it stand out. Plus the detailing on the hilt is just amazing. So it was really a great accessory, and obviously a key accessory for the movie. Finally, he comes with interchangeable hands, although here he includes his hands with the adamantium claws and also includes his bone claws, which offer a nice touch and variation, and the bone claws definitely look great. And as far as the figure itself, I really liked it at the time, and I thought it looked like a great representation of the character we saw in the movie. I also thought the sculpt was great. Today, looking at him, I think the Hugh Jackman likeness is there, but I don't know if it's the expression that's maybe throwing it off a little bit. It's not quite what we're used to. Beyond that though, great sculpt with amazing texturing and paint applications, and his hair is also done really well. The suit with the overcoat is also really nicely done. It's pretty simple, but the fabric is thin enough that everything layers well on the figure. I do need to futz around with him a lot more to make it look really good, but overall another good Wolverine for its time, and I'm happy to have him in the collection. Although, like the original Wolverine, I think this one also suffers from very loose ankle joints, so using the stand is essential if you want him to stand solidly. But I think this leads to the best of the best until now, and that is Logan from Days of Future Past in his Future uniform released in 2014. And without a doubt, this was the best Wolverine Hot Toys ever produced. It's also the simplest release, coming with just a figure, his stand, and a few interchangeable hands. One note again with the clawed hands, they are real metal and they are sharp. Particularly for this version, I can't tell you how many times I stabbed myself with these. But off the bat, the figure has shelf presence compared to the other two versions. It just pops and really stands out, and I think the uniform itself is also really nicely done and fits in well with the MCU style uniforms that have a more military style to them. But let's start with the best thing here, and that's the sculpt. The eyes are fully improved and the sculpt is just clearly Hugh Jackman. I mean, there's no denying that here. The paint apps, texturing are all extremely well done. And again, the material choice for the uniform gives you a lot of flexibility here. So he does achieve a lot more poses as a result. And I think the undershirt being blue and orange from a color point of view definitely lets him stand out a little bit more. I also do like the armor around his knees and the armored boots, which do have a split cut joint. Having said that, he also suffers from the weak ankle joint issue, so a stand is recommended. But he is without a doubt my favorite Wolverine in the collection. He's able to achieve the best articulation of the bunch, and I think without a doubt he has the best look of the three figures. I'm really curious to see what the 1973 version ends up looking like as far as the production run. I'm going to try to pick him up for my collection since he looks fantastic, and I'm sure his sculpt will prove to be the best of the set just because it's sculpt 10 years later after the fact. But it's going to be tough for me to dethrone the original Days of Future Past figure as my favorite. Again, I think there's so much great stuff working here. Now, I know a lot of collectors like to have the definitive version of the character and that's it in their set, but for me, I like having the multiple versions, especially if they're in different clothing styles or uniforms, as you can kind of see the progression of the character. So I'm definitely happy with all of these, and even though the earlier versions are a little dated, I wouldn't sell them or trade them. I like having them in the collection. So when I finally do get the 1973 Wolverine, I'll try to do another shot with all the figures so we can see kind of the final progression of the Hugh Jackman versions of the Hot Toys characters. Now, I am curious to see what's next for Wolverine once he breaks into the MCU, and to see which actor is going to be bringing him to life, and of course what the next Wolverine MCU Hot Toys figure will eventually be. So do you own any of these figures? Are you getting the 73 version as well? And what do you think about these? Are they too dated for you? Do you think they still stand up well? Do you have the same issues I do with the ankles, which is really the one pain to deal with when it comes to these three? Let me know your thoughts on Wolverine and the character's cinematic future. And if you're enjoying the content, please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll touch base on the next video.